Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Cherry Pickers Podcast, the show for all things hockey, featuring your hosts, Zuu and Bee Rhodes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we are so excited to be back. It is the return of the Cherry Pickers Podcast. My name is Zach, aka Zuu, and I'm here with my co-host Brody, aka Bee Rhodes. How you doing, Bee Rhodes?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It has been a hot minute since we have done an episode. Not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous. It's been a long time since we've been in the old recording room, but a lot of stuff happened over the summer with both hockey and our own lives, so we're excited to be back, and we're ready to go for season 2.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of cobwebs that we got to shake off, and but we're just going to get right into it, just jump right into all the action, because, man, it was a crazy off season in the world of hockey, and wow, this season coming up is going to be fantastic. I'm super excited and looking forward to it. I know you two are, Brody, so let's just let's talk about free agency a little bit. We had so many crazy things happen, so many different signings and whatnot, and yeah, I mean, as a Flames fan, man, that was one of the wildest off seasons I've ever been a part of, and yeah, a lot of teams made some crazy moves. So Brody, let's just start it off with let's just talk about, first of all, let's talk about Johnny Gaudreau. Let's start it off with that. You want to break down what happened there with Gaudreau?
Yeah, so after last season, Johnny Gaudreau and Calgary were trying to get a deal done, as far as I know. I don't know exactly what Calgary offered him. It was probably around 10 or 11 mil, I want to say, is roughly what Tree Living was going to give him. But he ended up going to the Eastern Conference. There was quite a few teams interested in him too. I think New Jersey, Philadelphia were a part of it. And in the end, he ended up choosing Columbus, which honestly struck me as a massive surprise. I didn't see him going there, but yeah, it was just interesting because I didn't expect Gaudreau to leave, and then he just kind of went there out of nowhere. So
yeah, it was pretty wild hearing the news that Johnny Gaudreau decided that he wanted to take his talent somewhere else, which was pretty shocking, seeming that he spent, his entire, I believe, 9 seasons with the Flames or something like that. So to have a franchise player decide all of a sudden that, nope, they don't want to come back, it's, it definitely sends shockwaves throughout the fan base. But yeah, he ended up deciding to go to Columbus on quite a cheaper deal. I believe, as you were saying, the offer for Gaudreau was something like 10.5 mil per season. So it was a pretty good chunk of change, and he ended up deciding to turn it down, which, I mean, all the power to him. He is a free agent. He can do what he wants, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, so he goes off to Columbus, no one was really expecting that either, which is crazy. I honestly thought he was going New Jersey. There was a lot of reports him going to Philly. But yeah, Columbus was the place that he went. And so he's going to be starting this season off, his first season with a team other than the Calgary Flames. How do you think he's going to do this season, Brody? How many points do you think he's going to put up?
I'm going to put him in around the 85-90 range. I don't think he's going to put up quite the amount of points he did playing with Lindholm and Tkachuk, but I could see him still getting around that 85-90 mark. I think he's going to be a really good playmaker for Patrick Laine on the power play. I still think he's going to produce pretty well offensively, but I don't see him getting the same amount of points that he did while he was playing with Calgary.
Yeah, I also agree. I think I could pencil him in for about 90 points. He is going to be playing that top line with Patrick Laine, and I believe Cole Sillinger might be on that top line, or maybe even rookie Kent Johnson. So that could be a talented top line, but I still don't think it's going to produce as, honestly, the best line in hockey last year did. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting, and it's really weird to see him in a Blue Jackets jersey, that's for sure. Seeing him in preseason and stuff, it's definitely a change of culture. But no, that's only, just the beginning of what happened this year in the free agency period. So after Gaudreau decides to not come back to Calgary, another Calgary Flame at the time, Matthew Tkachuk, also said that he would not be interested in re-signing with the Flames long-term after this season. So that kind of put the Flames in a little bit of a pickle, as well as not only one of their stars decides to leave, but their second star decides to leave as well. So you want to break that one down too, B. Rhodes?
Yeah, to be honest, this one I actually was not surprised by, because I knew from like the previous year there was talks from a lot of insiders that Kachuk wasn't really interested in staying long term anyway. So that one wasn't a major shock to me. But he was an RFA, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what Calgary was going to offer him, but yeah, he was a part of a pretty crazy trade because I was actually at your place when the trade happened, and it was actually like I couldn't believe the return that Calgary got for that. And on Florida's end, at the time, I thought they overpaid significantly for Kachuk. Like, I think he's a really solid player. He's a young player. I believe he's 24. He's entering the prime of his career. But to give up, I think it was Huberdeau, Weegar, a prospect, and a conditional first, I believe was the return.
Yes.
So yeah, that was quite the package for Kachuk, and I was honestly very shocked when that trade happened. Not so much when Kachuk ended up going somewhere else, but just the return for him. I couldn't believe the return for that.
Yeah, so for you at home that's listening to the podcast, if you don't know, me and Bee Rhodes are, childhood friends. We've been friends for many years, but we live about an hour and a half away from each other. So we try and see each other when we can, but of course, busy lives kind of thing. It just so happened that Brody was actually at my place for a couple days on the weekend there, and we were just hanging out and playing some Chell. Just hanging out, and the news broke that Matthew Tkachuk was being dealt to the Panthers, and like you said, Brody, it was Huberdeau, Weegar, Cole Schwindt was the prospect. He's a former either second or third round pick by the Panthers, and then a conditional 2025 first round pick for Matthew Tkachuk on a signed deal. Now Tkachuk's going to be getting, after this season, he's going to be getting 9.5 AAV for the next 8 years, which is a pretty good deal for Matthew Tkachuk, but yeah, no, I remember when that trade broke, I was sitting there and I was like, man, please let us get Lundell. Like, all I want is Lundell. If we can get him out of that, then that's fine. But I wasn't really expecting, the second highest scorer in the league, plus, a top 20 defenseman in the league, and a first and a prospect. It was like Christmas in free agency, you know what I'm saying? So, yeah, that was a crazy trade. And how do you think Matthew Tkachuk's going to do on the Panthers this year?
Well, again, I don't see him putting up, I think it was 104 points that he had last year. I don't know if he's going to have that same success playing with Barkov. I'm not sure who his other line mate's going to be. I'm not really sure what the Florida's roster's looking like this year, but I could see Tkachuk being in like the 90, 95 point range.
Yeah, there's no doubts that Barkov is, one of the best playmakers in the league. So is Huberdeau, obviously, but I think you're right about that one too. I do think Kachuk's probably going to put up about 90 points, same as Gaudreau in Columbus. With Florida, they had such a high octane offense last year. The best power play in the NHL and whatnot, but a lot of that did stem from Huberdeau, so it's going to be interesting to see over in Florida how they're going to bounce back, losing, their best playmaker on their team and one of the key drivers of their offense. So with Tkachuk in there, it adds a little bit more grit, it adds a little bit more, skill, but at the same time, they're losing out on one of their top defensemen as well. So it is going to be interesting for Florida, especially since they're in that really tough Atlantic division. You got teams like Tampa Bay, Toronto, and now even Ottawa and Detroit are trying to make a push for the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see how Florida pans out this year with Matthew Tkachuk. Same with Columbus. We'll see how Columbus does over there in the Metro, but I'm not really penciling Columbus in to be a playoff team this year. I don't think you are either, Brody, but it's going to be interesting to see those two guys in different uniforms. So with that said, let's talk about the Flames, Brody. How do you think the additions of Huberdeau and Weegar, and we'll get to another one, how do you think those two additions are going to pan out in Calgary?
I think Uyghur is going to be a really solid fit there. Their defense is already really deep as it is. I think Uyghur is only going to help with that. I think Jonathan Huberdeau is going to be a solid addition for them. I don't personally see him producing quite as well offensively that he did last season. I still think he's going to have a great year. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays with, I think his line mates are going to be Lindholm and Toffoli, as far as I know.
Yes.
So I think that's going to be a good line for them, and I think they're going to have a good season. They're usually a really good regular season team, and I don't expect anything different this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think Huberdeau definitely brings that level of octane of offense and that playmaking creativity to that Flames that Johnny Gaudreau had that they were about to be missing out on. And he definitely drives the play just like Johnny does, and he's got a little bit more size to him, and I don't know, it might just be a little bit biased because I still have a little sour feelings over Johnny, but I personally like Huberdeau more. I think Huberdeau is just a little bit more of a complete player. He's a little bit bigger. He's got the same skill set as Johnny has. So, and same thing with Uyghur. Uyghur's going to fit in perfectly in that decor. They have such a solid decor already, and Uyghur just makes it so much better. So I agree. I think they're going to be a solid team in the regular season, but with the Calgary Flames, I don't think the regular season matters. It really depends on how are they going to do in the playoffs this year. You know, with that disappointing loss to the Oilers in the second round this year, it really is a test to the Flames. Are they built for a team to go in a deep run this year, kind of thing? So with the free agency on that topic, let's talk about probably, I'd say, one of the next biggest signings in free agency, and it happened pretty late in the free agency. He was one of the top dogs in the class for a while, and no news was coming out. Everyone was going, and he was just sitting there, and there was some flirting with the Islanders and some flirting with the Avalanche, and lo and behold, the Calgary Flames also signed Nazem Kadri to a 7-year deal. What do you think of this deal, Brody?
I think short term it's going to be a good deal, but I don't know if it's going to age well because I think he's 32 right now, and it's a 7-year deal, so he'll be 39 when it ends. I think Kadri had a great season with Colorado. He's a pretty good defensive forward. I don't think he's going to put up 87 points. I would be pretty surprised if he did it again. But he's always been like a consistent 60-point, 65-point player. I think that's going to be pretty beneficial for Calgary's second line. But yeah, I know with like the cap going projected to go up, the 7x7 is going to look like a good cap hit, but I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of like the Markstrom contract. At the tail end, he's going to be pretty old when it ends, but short term, I think it's a pretty good deal for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. In the next couple of years, like obviously Calgary is pushing to be a cup contender, obviously with the core that they have right now and with the contracts that they have right now. You know, Calgary has saved, Brad Treliving has saved some money in some areas to be able to expend it in others. Like you look at the defense core right now, there's not a defenseman on the Calgary Flames that's making more than $5 million this year, and Calgary is widely considered one of the best decors in the league. So that just goes to show that with the masterclass of Brad Treliving, how he's able to, you know, put that money aside and be able to expend it in other areas. The thing I think about with these long-term deals, like you said, Kadri's going to be 39 years old making $7 million. Is he going to be able to play at the same pace that he has at 39? Probably not. Like, that's usually way past players, you know, prime. But the thing about those long-term deals is that NHL GMs don't go into those contract negotiations worrying about if that deal's going to bite them in the ass, you know, 7 years down the road, because that's at a point where their skill set is to flip that contract, you know, to teams that, you know, are tanking, are looking for the assets that can take that cap hit. You look at, for example, the reason why the Flames ended up getting Kadri was they were able to flip Sean Monahan to the Montreal Canadiens. Now, Sean Monahan only 27 or 28 or something like that. I can't remember his exact age, but he's making a good chunk of change, over $6 million per year, and he just came off of hip surgeries, multiple hip surgeries, so he's obviously not, you know, at the playing level that he was in his past. But it's the fact that they want to get those deals signed now and give the player what they want so they can be there. And then if the deal, you know, starts to fade off or dwindle off and it starts to look like a bad deal, then they have that skill set to flip that contract and not have to worry about it. So I think I agree with you, Brody, with the first couple of years. I think this Kadri deal is going to look very good. But we'll have to see what Treliving does, you know, in the last few years of the contract, I guess. So enough about the Flames, though. I love talking about the Flames, obviously, but let's talk about the Oilers for a change. So the Oilers made a pretty big signing this offseason. Why don't you just take it away, Brody?
Which signing do you want me to go with first? Like just free agent,
You gotta go for the big fish.
Free agent signings or just normal signings?
Go for the free agent signing, the big fish. Let's talk about the big fish.
All right. Well, for the first free agency signing that the Oilers did, they addressed a massive need that they had, a big hole in their roster that definitely dwindled their chances last year in the postseason, and that was to get a goalie. And they signed Jack Campbell to a 5-year, $25 million deal, so he's going to get $5 million per season. I think it's a great pickup for them. They needed to address that goaltending with Mike Smith being like 40 years old. Koskinen's deal was done. He decided to go to Europe. So, yeah, it's a big signing for them, and hopefully he'll be a good starting goalie for the Oilers.
Yeah, absolutely. That is the one thing that we've been talking about for a while with the Edmonton Oilers. They have a very good roster other than the goaltending, and for the longest time there was just no way to address the goaltending. Like Ken Holland just couldn't make a move, or there was no, goalies on the market for him to pick up. And finally in this free agency, a decent goalie comes along in Jack Campbell, and Jack Campbell had a pretty good season last year with the Leafs. No, I think this is going to be a great signing for the Oilers. I think the Oilers are going to do pretty well this year in the regular season, at least, with having a solid tandem actually, with Stuart Skinner backing up Jack Campbell, and I think that's a great signing for the Oilers as well.
Yeah, and I think Stuart Skinner is ready to be an NHL backup as well. I think he's put his time down in Bakersfield, and I think he's ready for that chance. He played pretty well last year when he did get called up for them, so I think he's definitely ready to at least be a backup to Jack Campbell.
Now, continuing on with the Oilers also re-signed a player, a pretty key piece to their playoff run this year. Brody, let's talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, they got Evander Kane done to a 4-year deal with a AAV of $5.125 million per season. Evander Kane was a huge piece that the Oilers added last January. At the time that Evander Kane got brought in, the Oilers were in a massive struggle. They completely fell out of the top spot in the Pacific Division to be outside of a playoff spot. After starting the year 16-5-2, they went on a 2-11-2 run. They fired Dave Tippett and brought in Jay Woodcroft, and right before Tippett got fired, Evander Kane was brought in, and he had an immediate impact on the Oilers. He was a great winger for McDavid. He put up 22 goals in the final 39 games of the year, and then he was a big part of their playoff run as well and helped them reach the Western Conference Final. So yeah, it was a massive re-signing for the Oilers, and he's going to be another big piece for their season this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of Evander Kane. If you've listened to past episodes, you'll know that already. But for the Oilers' sake, yes, this is a fantastic signing for them. Like Brody said, he brought in that much-needed scoring and a little bit of grit as well to the lineup. That scoring was something they were struggling with halfway through the season. And as soon as Evander Kane came in, it all started to click, and he was lights out for them in the playoffs. So getting a former 30-goal scorer at only, just above $5 million per season is a pretty good deal for the Oilers and for Evander Kane as well, who is struggling just to make an NHL contract. So, yeah, I agree. I think that is a very good signing for both Kane and the Oilers, and he's probably going to be very impactful in this season coming up as well. So, all right, Brody, let's talk about some more free agent signings. I'm just going to start rattling them off, so you let me know if you like them, if you don't like them, stuff like that, how you think it's going to fit, if you think it's not going to fit. So let's start off with the New York Rangers signing Vincent Trocheck. What do you think about Vinny Trocheck?
I like it because they did lose Ryan Strome to free agency as well, so replacing Ryan Strome with Vincent Trocheck, I think he'll be a good piece for their top six. I think he's a pretty good defensive center. I don't know too much about his game. I don't really know a whole lot about his offensive production, but he's probably around the 50-point range per year, give or take. So I think he's going to be a good addition for the Rangers, and he's going to help with their depth up front.
You almost hit it on the nose there, Brody. You had 51 points last season, so you were right there with it, but yes, he is a very good two-way guy. He's going to fit perfectly right down the middle, right behind Zibanejad on that second line, and he's got some pretty good wingers to play with too. You're looking at Panarin, Chris Kreider, even Lafreniere, Capo Caco, stuff like that. I think Vinny Trocheck kind of brings that a little bit of playoff experience as well as his leadership, and how he performs on the ice is such a good leadership to those young players in New York. So I think this is a very good signing for New York, especially losing Ryan Strome and Andrew Kopp. I think it's going to be a very good replacement for those guys there. Let's move it over to Washington now. The Washington Capitals signed Darcy Kemper, Stanley Cup champion. What do you think about that deal?
I love it. Darcy Kemper is a really solid goalie. For a few years there when he was playing with Arizona, I thought he was underrated. He didn't get very much attention. He's going to be a good number one for them after losing Ilya Samsonov. So I think it's a good addition for the Capitals.
Yeah, Darcy Kemper definitely got his payday. He's going to be making $5.25 million next year, which is very good for a starting goalie. I think Washington's a great place for him. You know, Washington's kind of one of those teams that they're good. Obviously, they won a Stanley Cup, within the last decade. But, they're one of those teams that are good, but not like crazy good that everyone talks about them. So I think moving over, to a team like Washington from, the Stanley Cup champions kind of keeps him off the radar. And I think that's where Darcy Kemper shines when he's not, under the spotlight and under the pressure. I think he really does perform very good. So I think that contract over in Washington, I think it's going to be very good for Kemper and for the Washington Capitals as well, like you said, as they lost Samsonov and they lost Vanacek as well in free agency. So good pickup there for Washington. Let's talk about the Ottawa Senators signing former Philadelphia Flyers captain Claude Giroux. What do you think of that deal?
Again, I like the deal. Claude Giroux is still a very good player. He's going to produce pretty good for Ottawa, and I think he's also going to bring the leadership aspect to a young Ottawa Senators team that's still in the process of trying to be competitive and push for a playoff spot. And I think Claude Giroux is going to be a really solid addition to their top six and also be an important part of that leadership group.
I think this is one of the signings that probably the best signing that the Ottawa Senators could have made. With how good of a leader that Claude Giroux is, how much he brings to that locker room, and how much he brings on the ice to that Ottawa Senators team. There's no better, icon to look up to for those young players in Ottawa. And they got a lot of young offensive players that are going to benefit so much from the guidance of Claude Giroux. Looking at guys like newly acquired DeBrincat, even Brady Tkachuk, who's their captain right now. There's a lot of them, Batherson, Norris, Formanton, like lots of players that are going to benefit from having Claude Giroux on their team. So I really like this signing by the Ottawa Senators. I think this is a great pickup, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Ottawa this season. I wonder if they're going to push for a playoffs. Do you think they make it this year, Brody?
I think they're just going to be on the outside looking in. I think they're going to be close and they're going to be competitive, but I don't have them in just yet.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. It's going to be very close. This Atlantic Division, like I said, is going to be so tight this year. You've got the top dogs in Toronto and Tampa Bay, and Florida's looking to be a top dog as well. And then you kind of have the Boston Bruins, with starting the season with some key injuries. Brad Marchand being out, Charlie McAvoy being out. We got to look at them and wonder if they're going to be a playoff contender. And then you have the teams like Detroit and Ottawa that are, big off seasons for those two teams, and they're looking to get into the playoff races as well. It's it's going to be really interesting to watch to see how that Atlantic Division unfolds this year. But let's move over to the Central Division now, Brody. We got the Nashville Predators, and they re-signed their probably one of their best players other than Roman Josi, Philip Forsberg. What do you think of Forsberg coming back to Nashville?
It's huge for the Nashville Predators to have Philip Forsberg. He's one of their elite players up front, and he's going to be a big part of them pushing for a playoff spot in the Central again this year and hopefully going a decent run. He's a very important part for that team.
Yeah, so the Nashville Predators re-signed Philip Forsberg. They also bring in Ryan McDonough from the Tampa Bay Lightning. And then they also signed Nino Niederreiter in the offseason. What do you think of the Nashville Predators this year? Can they make the playoffs?
I have them in the top three in the Central this year.
Oh, wow.
I very well think they're going to make the playoffs. I think UC Saros is a elite goalie. Nino Niederreiter is a good offensive player. He's going to get you around 20 goals, 50 points, which is really going to help their offense up front. Philip Forsberg, and then getting Ryan McDonough makes their defense, their top four, look very solid with Josi, Fabro, Ekholm, McDonough. I think they're going to be a solid team, and I think they're going to get a divisional spot in the playoffs.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think to this day, Nashville has always had one of those solid defense cores, and it's just gotten even better by adding Ryan McDonough. And I think Nashville is a very solid team. Top three in the Central, I could definitely see it. I could see them, competing this year in the playoffs quite heavily. I think they're going to be a pretty good team. And, bringing back Forsberg, one of their key pieces that had 84 points last year, that was definitely, something that needed to be done for Nashville to keep their playoff hopes alive. So we'll have to keep tabs on Nashville this year as well and see how they're doing. Let's talk about Detroit, because, man, Detroit had a busy offseason as well. Let's talk about David Perron signing with the Detroit Red Wings. He had 57 points last year with the St. Louis Blues. What do you think of David Perron?
I like that signing for Detroit. Like, David Perron is still a pretty good player. Like you said, he's going to get around 50 to 60 points for Detroit. I'm not sure how old he is. Is he like early 30s?
Yeah, he's early 30s, I think.
Yeah, so he's going to bring a veteran presence to Detroit, who is a young up-and-coming team. I think he's going to be a good mentor for young guys like Philip Zadina, Lucas Raymond, even Moritz Seider, even though he's not the same position, but just going to bring that leadership aspect to a young group. And I think Detroit's going to be a better team this year. I think they're going to be competitive, and they're going to be on the start of the upswing here.
Absolutely. And not only did they bring in David Perron, they also brought in Andrew Kopp, who played last year with the Rangers and the Winnipeg Jets. Andrew Kopp as well. He's a great two-way forward. He's honestly one of my favorites lately. Like, I really like Andrew Kopp's game. What do you think about Andrew Kopp, Brody?
Again, I think it's a really good pickup by Steve Yzerman. He's going to be a great second-line center for them behind Dylan Larkin. He's got a great defensive game, like you said. He's a great depth player, and he's a solid player. I think Detroit's going to have a much better year this year, and they're going to be a lot more competitive.
So do you think Detroit will make the playoffs this year?
Again, I have Detroit outside looking in, but I think they're going to be close just like Ottawa, but I don't have them in this year.
Yeah, I think they're going to be close too. I think it really all depends on their goaltending this year, if Nedeljkovic can kind of bounce back. But I think, at the end of the day, Detroit's got a really good team coming up, not only for this year, but for the next few years. With Mo Seider, who, just won the Calder Trophy. You got Lucas Raymond. They got big 6'8" Elmer Soderblom. We talked about him a while ago, Brody. Do you remember me talking about him?
Yeah, he's a really solid player for sure.
He's so sick, man. He's 6'8", and he's got hands that are so silky soft. Detroit does so good with their drafting department. They always pick up those great players in late rounds, but I really do think that if Detroit doesn't get it done this year and doesn't get to the playoffs this year, they have a lot of time to shine still. So I'm excited to watch Detroit hockey as well this year. All right, so now is the time, Brody. I remember in our first ever episode of the Cherry Pickers podcast, we did our predictions for the 2022 NHL awards. So it's only fitting that in the first episode of Season 2, we do our predictions for the 2023 NHL Awards. Are you ready, Brody?
I'm ready. Let's do her.
So we're going to start off with the Lady Byng Trophy. Who do you got winning the Lady Byng this year, Brody?
I have Johnny Gaudreau of the Columbus Blue Jackets winning the Lady Byng.
Interesting. I'm going to take my favorite player, Alexander Barkov of the Florida Panthers. I believe his two-way game is unmatched, and he's, he doesn't take a lot of penalties. So I'm going to go Alex Barkov for the Lady Byng. Let's move on to the James Norris Trophy. Best defenseman in the league. Who do you think it's going to be this year?
I mean, I don't think it's going to be any surprise when I say this. I think it's going to be back-to-back years. Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah, Cale Makar winning not only the Norris, but the Conn Smythe and the Stanley Cup last year. What a fantastic season he had. I also would not be surprised if he won it again. And for that reason, I am also going to say Cale Makar for the James Norris. Let's move on to the Vezina Trophy. Best goalie in the NHL. Who do you got?
I have Jussi Saros of the Nashville Predators getting the Vezina this year. I think he's going to be a big reason why they're going to be a divisional spot, as I said earlier. And I think Jussi Saros is going to have a great season, and I have him as my Vezina Trophy winner.
Yeah, Jussi Saros, had a really good season last year and unfortunately caught the injury bug right before playoffs, which didn't allow Nashville to really battle against the Avalanche in the first round. But that's a pretty good pick there, Jussi Saros. I mean, he's kind of slept on as a goalie. He's starting to get more recognition now, but he is a very good goalie, and I would not be surprised if in a year or two it's between him, Shesterkin, and Vasilevsky for best goalie in the league. I'm going to take the safe pick, Brody, this year, and I'm just going to go with Vasilevsky. I don't think there's any goalie in the league yet that rivals Vasilevsky. We saw Shesterkin, in the playoffs last year. Shesterkin, put up the numbers and was fantastic and won himself the Vezina last year, but I still think Vasilevsky is the best goalie in the world, and I think he's going to win the Vezina this year. So let's move on to the Art Ross Trophy, the most points in the NHL. Who's your pick, Brody?
I've got the man himself, our Lord, our Savior, our Jesus himself, Connor McDavid. I would not be surprised this man puts up 125 to 130 points this year. Like, he's just on another level, and I think he's going to be the Art Ross winner.
It's always safe to pick Connor McDavid. It does not matter the category. If Connor McDavid was a defenseman, he could win the Norris. You know what I'm saying? Like, Connor McDavid, man, there's no explaining how good he is, and that is obviously a very good pick to put your money on. I'm going to be the off-brand, and I'm going to cause a riot, and I'm going to say Austin Matthews walks away with the Art Ross this year. I think with how good he was last year, the Leafs, they're only looking to get better. That run with Tampa Bay in the first round of the playoffs, had to spark something in that Leafs organization. And not to mention, Mitch Marner, I think, as well, has gotten a lot better this offseason. He's put on a lot more muscle. It sounds like he's adapting to a lot more scenarios. Like, the Leafs even might play him on defense here and there. I think having a guy like Marner on your line, especially if Marner's improving, is not only going to just boost Austin Matthews' game, but it's going to put some more points on Matthews' name as well. So I think Matthews going to walk away with the Art Ross. I'd like to pick McDavid, but I don't know. I want to see some chaos happen. All right, let's talk about the Maurice Richard Trophy, most goals in the NHL. Who is your pick, Brody?
I've got the man that you just talked about. I got Austin Matthews winning the Rocket. I'm going to have him in about 58 goals this year. That's going to be my guess.
58, all right. Obviously, I'd have to pick Matthews for the Rocket if I chose him for the Art Ross. I'm going to say Austin Matthews pots 62 this year. I think it's going to be really close. I think Leon Draisaitl's going to put up pretty close numbers, but I think Matthews is going to edge him out just a little bit. I think he's going to score about 62 for the blue and white, so both of us got Austin Matthews for the Rocket, but who is going to win the Hart Trophy, Brody? The most valuable player in the league. Who do you got?
I've got a spicy one. Do you want to hear this one?
I'm excited. Let's hear it.
So, my reason for picking this, and this is going to be a pick that no one's going to expect me to pick for the Hart, but this team lost Kevin Fiala in the offseason. I think because of that loss, this player is going to have a bigger impact on Minnesota's success and getting them into the playoffs. I've got Kirill Kaprizov winning the Hart Trophy this year.
Wow, okay. I was not expecting Kirill. That's actually awesome. All right. That's I'm a little blown away with I got no words to say. That's crazy. Okay, Kirill Kaprizov for Brody. I'm going to be boring.
Boo.
I got McDavid. McDavid's going to win the Hart. You know what I'm saying? It's the Oilers are McDavid's team, and without McDavid, the Oilers are, they're all right, but they're not, conference finals Edmonton Oilers. So, I'm going to say McDavid wins the Hart. There's no question that he is the sole leader of that team. So, Kirill Kaprizov, I like it, Brody. Okay, before we get into the playoff awards, let's talk about the Jack Adams. We didn't predict the Jack Adams last year. Brody, who do you think is going to win the Jack Adams this year?
I've actually got a little bit of a biased pick on this, but I do have a justification for it. I have Jay Woodcroft of the Edmonton Oilers winning the Jack Adams this year.
Okay.
Since he took over from Woodcroft last year, the Oilers were 26-9-3. They were third in the league, and he brought them to the conference finals when it was looking like they were going on a complete tank dive. I'm interested to see what he can do with a full training camp and a full season behind the bench. So I'm going to take Jay Woodcroft.
Yeah, that's actually not a bad pick at all. Like you said, Jay Woodcroft, when he took over that team just completely 180'd. And I would like to say he is definitely a big reason why that team got to the conference finals. And they performed very well under Woodcroft. So that is not a bad pick at all. I'm also going with the Pacific Division coach. And no, I'm not going with Daryl Sutter, even though I like Daryl Sutter and he could win it back-to-back years. I'm actually going to go with Bruce Cassidy. So Bruce Cassidy, new head coach of the Vegas Golden Knights. He was coach for the Boston Bruins for quite a few years. I think the Vegas Golden Knights are going to be a force to reckon with this year. You know, they got a healthy Jack Eichel. Hopefully they stay away from injuries this year. You know, that's a big reason why they missed out on the playoffs last year. By no means am I a Vegas fan, but I really do think Vegas has a deep roster and a good roster. And I think bringing in Bruce Cassidy instead of Peter DeBoer is just going to be night and day for the Vegas Golden Knights. So I'm going to go with Bruce Cassidy for the Jack Adams. All right, let's talk about how should we put this in order. Let's do the Conn Smythe Trophy, Brody. So MVP of the playoffs, and after you give me your Conn Smythe winner, I want to hear your Stanley Cup winner.
All right, so for the Conn Smythe, I have Sebastian Aho of the Carolina Hurricanes.
There's no way.
I am dead serious. I took Sebastian Aho of the Carolina Hurricanes.
There's no way. So I'd like to point out that we did not script anything. I just told Brody what I wanted him to predict, and he wrote it down on his own. I had no idea he was going to say Sebastian Aho, but continue on, Brody.
I think Carolina's a really deep team this year. They added Pacioretty and Brent Burns to an already loaded roster, and I think Carolina's going to end up winning the Stanley Cup. So I got Sebastian Aho getting the Conn Smythe.
So for my Conn Smythe winner, I have Sebastian Aho of the Carolina Hurricanes. I think he's going to have a really good playoffs. And I think the Carolina Hurricanes are going to win the Stanley Cup. What are the odds that we both called it from, you know, that's not even like an obvious pick either, which is kind of funny because, you know, you could go the route of like, oh yeah, you know, the Lightning are going to win and Vasilevsky wins the Conn Smythe. Like Sebastian Aho is kind of a reach, but that's funny. I can't believe we predicted the same Conn Smythe and Stanley Cup winners. So that is our awards prediction, Bee Rhodes. How you feeling? You feel confident about your predictions or what?
I feel we didn't predict the Calder though.
Oh, the Calder! I
picks.
Almost forgot about the Calder. Thank you, Bee Rhodes. I almost forgot about that. Who is your Calder pick?
I've got Matty Beniers of the Seattle Kraken taking home the Calder.
Yeah, I like Matty Beniers' game. Last year when he played, he had his NHL debut against the Flames, and man, he was sharp. And even throughout this preseason, like he had like 9 points in 10 games last year after his college season was over. And yeah, Matty Beniers is going to be a very nice player for the Seattle Kraken in the future. I like that pick. It was mine was kind of a toss-up. It was almost a flip of the coin situation. It was between Matty Beniers, but I think I'm going to go with Marco Rossi of the Minnesota Wild this year. I really like Marco Rossi's game, especially if they play him with Kaprizov. The craftiness and the speed and the edges that Marco Rossi brings, man. He's a nice player. So I'm going to go with Marco Rossi of the Minnesota Wild as my Calder pick. And thank you for the catch in that.
I actually got one more award that we did miss as well.
Another one!
I do like your pick with Marco Rossi. I think he's going to be a good player with Minnesota and be exciting to see what he can do playing with Kaprizov. But yeah, we also got to talk about the Selke picks.
Oh, yes, the Selke. Who is your Selke candidate?
So I could say this guy because it's basically his award now, but I picked someone else. For those of you who don't know, I was going to say Patrice Bergeron because that guy's won it like, I don't know how many times, 7 or 8. Just give him the award already.
Yep.
But I'm taking a player from the Western Conference. I think they're going to be a good team this year. This guy's a very good face-off player. He's a very good defensive forward, and that is Ryan O'Reilly of the St. Louis Blues. Yeah,
that's a very solid pick. I like that. Yeah, O'Reilly has that 200-foot game, and like you said, very good on faceoffs, and he's always been that defensive-minded forward. And yeah, O'Reilly is a very, very solid pick for that award. Mine, you know, it's biased, but it's not. I'm going with the guy that finished second place in voting last year, and that is Elias Lindholm of the Calgary Flames. Elias Lindholm sneakily has become one of the best two-way centers in the NHL. He had something like a plus 50, a plus minus of 50 last year on that top line with Gaudreau and Tkachuk, but not only did he play top line minutes, he also played a ton of penalty kill time for the Flames as well, and yeah, Lindholm's defensive game has just shot up through the rafters in the last couple seasons, so Lindholm's going to be my Selke candidate. Did I forget any more awards, Bee Rhodes, or what?
I think you're good now. I
think
saw
we got
the
'em
ones
all.
I have listed, so I think we're good.
If we forgot any awards, you can shoot me some crap on Twitter at your boy Zuu, and also give Bee Rhodes a follow over on Twitter. It's BrodyMac97, right?
Yes, sir. Looking to get more followers from the podcast and grow my Twitter as well, so give me a follow. It would be greatly appreciated.
Yes, so this season we will be uploading an episode every single week, so make sure you stay tuned, turn on those notifications, and make sure you follow us over at Twitter. Our handle is at TCP_show. We are also on YouTube as well, the Cherry Pickers Podcast, and we're also on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, so make sure you check us out there, and Spotify as well. Do not forget about Spotify. Brody, it's great to be back. I'm glad we were able to get back together and talk some more hockey and cover the hockey news this year in the NHL. It's going to be a fun one, man.
Lots to come, so stay tuned for future episodes, and it's going to be a fun year, and excited to watch some hockey. It's coming next week. I'm so excited, man. Let's get her going.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed the show, and stay tuned for our next episodes. Take care.